In our previous reading this semester, we had some novels centered on larger-than-life historical figures whose individual actions changes the course of history in their fictional world. I'm thinking especially of Genli Ai and Therum Remir Estraven in The Left Hand of Darkness. We've met many more characters who are at a kind of man in the street or woman in the street level who are looking up at a history they cannot control. Like Butler's characters, like Philip K. Dick's characters, people who are inside history and unable to change it through their individual actions, who have to respond to the world they live in. I would argue Case is much the same. In Neuromancer, he is responding to larger things. He has a bit role that he in history that he's hired for, and that's all he is, just there to do a game. In Robinson's Red Mars, we have larger than life historical figures who still don't control history, who are as influential and as famous as they could reasonably be. Nobody is more famous than John Boone in this novel, who are preternaturally, almost implausibly gifted. They're all extremely vigorous. They're all, even before they get the treatment, the gerontological treatment, they're all very vigorous middle-aged people who like to hike and climb rocks and stuff. They're all well above average intelligence. Some of them candidates for the Nobel, or Vlad's case, a Nobel Prize winner. They are still not in control. They're at the top. They are influencing history in a small way, but only in a small way that's beyond their control. And many of the characters who are trying to influence history learn the hard way in Red Mars, thinking especially of Frank, how much beyond their control it really is. One of the things this means is Red Mars has a plot, but it's not plot-centric, by which I mean it's not simply a set of structured by a set of plot devices, each of which leads on to the next plot device, which unlocks the next plot device until we beat the level boss, or in this case, are beaten by him. This is not a story in which somebody is going to finally win the day for the good guys by winning a sword fight, which will determine the political form of the galaxy, or where we're going to win an aerial dog fight, aerial combat. Boone's a great pilot, but his pilot skills are just part of his PR, his larger than life persona. He works on them because they're good for his image, not because he's actually going to solve anything by being a talented pilot. Their acts do influence history and the changing natural history of Mars, but it's much bigger than any of them. What this means, so what holds us together? There are plot incidents. Here, the larger history, economics, the social changes, the natural climatological changes, those generate plot incidents where someone has to run for his life, someone's caught in a dust storm, someone has to like outrun a flood. It's not that the plot drives history, it's that history drives incidents, and those are kind of one-offs and like moments of excitement. So we have what holds this novel together. Structurally, there are a number of threads. I want to talk about three big ones. One, it is ordered by the changing political and natural history of Mars. It's a novel dominated by the political changes that happen on this planet with the settlement, from 100 people in what's essentially a scientific outpost to a fairly large population undergoing a revolution that is violently suppressed, and the changes of the environment to a fairly untouched Mars, to a Mars that's being changed around the edges by the best efforts, and then one that becomes actually changed more in ways that are positive to the kind of green Martians, the terraformers project, but in a catastrophic way. We didn't find the water through science. It is released through catastrophic violence, in which lots of people die. So the first level is the big picture brings us along. It is not so different from Tolstoy's War and Peace, where it's like, okay, these characters have to live through the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon showing up and invading Moscow, how we're going to get Moscow, where history generates the plot events rather than the characters' plot events driving history. Secondly, there's a structural element of mystery centered on Coyote and Hiroko and the Hidden Colony. One of the reasons I have sent you on your virtual scavenger hunt across the barren face of Mars looking for the Coyote is because I think you'll find when you found every time he turns up, you'll see how that thread keeps coming back and providing a structural thread, a resonance every so often we come back to that mystery. It's resolved near the end where the hidden colonists have gone, where they're hiding. We become more and more sure of who and what the Coyote is. But we see him various times interacting in various ways where various characters have only partial sense of him, and some point of view characters never actually understand who that is at all. So there's the mystery. That's the second layer. That structure comes through. And in one way, like the ending of the novel, the novel ends because we've come to a landmark, both in the natural and political history of Mars, the destruction, the failure of the 2061 failed revolution, the catastrophic ecological changes unleashed by that warfare. Secondly, we have a resolution of the thread of mystery that goes through the first volume of this trilogy, like where's the Coyote, where are the hidden colonists? Okay, now we have found them. We end with them, mystery resolved, sense of formal satisfaction. The third way that this novel functions, what holds it together, are moments that are really native to literary fiction and harder to find in extremely commercial fiction. Moments of epiphany or character change, moments where the individual character's perspective changes. All these characters are smaller than history, but they're still people, and the novel, as a novel, is interested in their individual experience. We have a multi-viewpoint novel, partly because we're interested in their viewpoints, and they change and they grow. I want to stop and read two particular moments where this happens, where a character has a moment that changes her or his perspective and really isn't the same after that. First, let me go to page 141 and 142 in this edition. The moment where Nadia, our third point of view character, goes out to see the sunset. This does not seem like a plot event. This is something that maybe ends a short story by Joyce in Epiphany. She goes out to see the sunset and she has an experience that changes her. And she becomes a different point of view character after this moment in this section than she was before. She sees things differently after this. Her perspective changes. Last paragraph on 141. The sun touched the horizon, and the dune crest faded to shadow. The little button sun sank under the black line to the west. Now the sky was a maroon dome, the high clouds of pink, the pink of moss campion. Stars were popping out everywhere, and the maroon sky shifted to a vivid dark violet, an electric color that was picked up by the dune crests, so that it seemed the crescents of liquid twilight lay across the black plain. Suddenly, Nadia felt a breeze swirl through her nervous system, running up her spine and out into her skin. Her cheeks tingled, and she could feel her spinal cord thrum. Beauty could make you shiver. It was a shock to feel such a physical response to beauty, a thrill like some kind of sex. And this beauty was so strange, so alien. Nadia had never seen it properly before, nor never really felt it. That she realized that now. She had been enjoying her life as if it were Siberia made right, so that really she had been living in a huge analogy, understanding everything in terms of her past. But now she stood under a tall violet sky on the surface of a petrified black ocean, all new, all strange. It was absolutely impossible to compare it to anything she had seen before. And all of a sudden the past sheared away in her head and she turned in circles like a little girl trying to make herself dizzy, without a thought in her head. Weight seeped inward from her skin, and she didn't feel hollow anymore. On the contrary, she felt extremely solid, compact, balanced, a little thinking boulder, sent spinning like a top. A bunch of things are happening there. Some, Robinson isn't showing his prose, but it's beautiful, artful prose. Listen to it sometimes. Read some Robinson aloud. It matters. We've come back to Erica mentioned that image that's very prominent at the beginning of this section where Nadia imagines herself as a hollow woman because her environmental suit, her walker, weighs more than she does, so the center of gravity is at the outside of her body. Here we bring that metaphor back and change it. She's not hollow. She's been hollow, and she becomes metaphorically full. She becomes centered in herself. She has been a character, not just is she seeing Mars for the first time and its strangeness and giving up her analogies to past Earth, she's actually becoming a more perceptive person in terms of, who knew beauty could be this exciting? You know who knew this? Maya. Maya really knew it all along. She's not the only one. Nadia has actually been a little aesthetically tone deaf, as I mentioned in another video. She's someone who thinks the reconstituted milk in the cereal tastes just the same as fresh milk. That cannot be true. She's a person who's not been fairly deaf to aesthetic and sensual experience, blind to it, and here she's become really alive. When she goes back to the base that she built herself, that was her pride and joy, it looks ugly to her, and she makes changes. She changes as a character. She behaves differently. She also sees the world differently, which means we get to see it differently through her eyes. She levels up as a viewpoint character because she gets access to a level of perception and notices things she would previously not notice. Let me go to one other, and also that is a moment of epiphany. It's a moment of character development. It's been carefully prepared. It pays back earlier metaphors like the hollow woman metaphor that Erica mentions in our discussion boards, and it sets the stage for later things that Nadia is going to see, do, perceive, what she will notice in the future. Let me go to what, on this reading, and I've lost count of how many times I've read this novel, on this reading seems to me one of the saddest moments in the novel. The novel where Frank is trying to speak in Guns Under the Table, when he's trying to get people, together, and he realizes he needs Boone. This is page 459 in the Guns Under the Table section. It's down in the middle of that last big paragraph. He told them some of the usual things, his standard address, all chopped and censored, but as it was sadly tattered by current events, it didn't sound very coherent, even to him. Look, he said, desperately revising as he spoke, ad-libbing, searching through the face in the crowd. When we came up here, we came to a different place, to a new world, and that necessarily makes us different beings than we were before. Pardon me. Than we were before. None of the old directives from Earth matter. Inevitably, we will make a new Martian society just in the nature of things. It comes out of the decisions we make together by our collective action. And they are decisions that we're making in our time, in these years, right now, in this very instant. But if you dodge back in the outback and join one of the hidden colonies, you isolate yourself. You remain whatever you were when you came, never metamorphosing into a Martian human. And you deprive the rest of us of your experience and your input. I know this personally, believe me. Pain glanced through him, and he was astonished to feel it. Another character experiencing something that he or she doesn't expect, that wasn't ready for, a change in perspective. As you know, some of the first 100 were the first to disappear, presumably under the leadership of Hiroko Ai. I still don't understand why they did it. I really don't. But how we have missed her genius for systems design in the years since, I can hardly tell you. Why, I think you can accurately say that part of our problems now result from her absence these many years. He shook his head, tried to gather his thoughts. The first time I saw this canyon I was with her. It was one of my first explorations of this area, and I had Hiroko Ai at my side, and we looked down into this canyon, its floor bare and flat, and she said to me, "It's like the floor of a room." He stared at the audience, trying to remember Hiroko's face. Yes. No. Strange how one remembered faces until you tried to look at them in your mind when they turned away from you. I've missed her. I come here, and it's impossible to believe it's the same place, and so it's hard to believe I ever really knew her. He paused, tried to focus on their faces. Do you understand? No, someone bellowed. A flicker of his old anger boiled through his confusion. I'm saying we have to make a new Mars here. I'm saying we're completely new beings, that nothing is the same here. Nothing is the same. He had to give up, go sit down. What Frank has just done at the beginning end of that long speech is give essentially the old John Boone inspirational stock speech, the one he was deriding at the opening of the novel. He has now come around and become a Boonian, but he doesn't have the inspirational capacity to make it work. My interpretation of the part about missing Hiroko, I think he does in fact miss Hiroko and does miss that experience of being with her, and if he treasures like sharing her perspective and her design expertise, her systems design expertise. I think he's also indirectly talking about missing Boone, that he cannot do. This is the moment where he realizes that Boone was right, and the moment where he realizes he can't do it without Boone. This is, for me, an incredibly sad moment for a character who doesn't usually invite a whole lot of compassion or pity. Here, Frank has tried, let's see what I can do with this planet without Boone, and in the end, he's giving a speech where he's just trying to do Boone's act because that turns out to be the truth. And he's realized it when it's too late, and the reason he doesn't have Boone with him is him.